Hello everyone. So in this particular video, what we'll be doing, we'll be discussing all the acts from 1773 till 1947. And I'll be sharing my notes also. But the major aspect will be to do everything from 1773 to 1947, right? 1773 to 1947. Because there is a very high probability that at least one question will be, because UPSC does ask question from acts, don't they? Right? So let's not waste time. So Regulating Act 1773. What happened via this act? So Governor of Bengal become Governor General of Bengal. So this Governor of Bengal become Governor General of Bengal, and at that time Warren Hastings was the Governor General of Bengal, right? Or Governor of Bengal, and he became the Governor General. The process of centralization started. Why? Because earlier, what happened? Bombay, Madras, Kolkata, I mean, it's Calcutta, all these governors, they have their independent powers. But now the governors of Bombay and Madras were made subordinate. So the process of centralization started from 1773, right? Four-member executive council was made, and Warren Hastings and Governor General was told that take decision after talking with each other. Lots of quarrels happens because of that. Warren Hastings was very frustrated because of that. To what do you say? To undo all these things. So what you have to understand is the process of centralization started from 1773, right? Governors of what do you say? Bombay and Madras were made subordinate to Warren Hastings. Warren Hastings became Governor General of Bengal. Earlier, he was only Governor of Bengal. Major features, right? Now let's move and let's talk about Pitt's India Act of 1784. Cool, dude. So in Pitt's India Act of 1784, what happened? Because they were having so many issues, so there were two things which were created. One was Board of Control, and the second was Court of Directors. Board of Control, and just listen to it like a story. That's it. Don't try to remember anything. So earlier there was an issue, four-member executive council was there from 1773 Act. So now what happened? So they created two boards, or there were two boards. One was Board of Control and Court of Directors. What they tried to do was they tried to separate the political and economic functions of Pitt's India Act. Oh, sorry, of the East India Company, right? And one which is very important thing is, for the first time, it distinguished the commercial and political functions via these boards. And for the first time, companies' territory in India were called British possessions. What they were called? They were called British possessions via the Pitt's India Act of 1784. What else happened? Many other things happened, many small things happened, right? But we don't need to go that deep into detail. Just remember Board of Control, Court of Directors, right? And for the first time, company's territory in India was called British possessions in India, dude. Okay, dude. Let's move on, dude. We're just trying to take an overview. In the next part, we'll talk about Charter Act of 1813, very important act and very high probability that it can be asked again and again. So what happened? Trade monopoly of East India Company ended. Even before that, there were many cases and all those stuffs were going on. Politics and everything. Different companies were trying to, what do you say? Trying to influence the royals by different mechanisms. So, and all these things bear fruit by Charter Act of 1813. Trade monopoly was abolished, but the only caveat was trade in tea and trade with China was still under EIC. Trade in tea and trade with China was still under EIC via Charter Act of 1813, right? Now, and what you have to understand is political functions increased and economic function continued to decrease, right? So Charter Act of 1813. Apart from this, one more thing which happened in 1813. Now, 1 lakh rupee was set aside for education. 1 lakh rupee was set aside for education purposes. British missionaries, they were also allowed to propagate their teachings and everything via Charter Act of 1813, right? Cool, dude. Now let's talk about, again, we're just talking about the important things. We don't need to do PhD here. We're talking from prelims perspective, dude. So now let's move on to the other act. We are doing the act and we are owning, say, crossing that particular section. Charter Act of 1813. Now, even what do you say? The previous trade and tea and trade with China, all those things also ended with Charter Act of 1833. Now it only became, this particular EIC only became an administrative body. This became only an administrative body. It has no economic function at all. Right? Now, one very important thing that happened with Charter Act of 1833 was, now Governor General of Bengal was called Governor General of India. He was the GG of India. And who was the first Governor General of India? William Bentinck. All these points are very important from William's perspective. So William Bentinck became the first Governor General of a cute country called India. Right? That's it. and there were different things. Law members were appointed. Macaulay was given different functions. No need to worry about all those things. We are focusing on the major important aspects and trying to do a parallel study. Charter Act of 1813, EIC became purely an administrative body. It lost all monopoly over trade activities, right? And Board of Control becomes stronger and stronger. Governor General of India became Governor General of Bengal became Governor General of India. William Bentinck was the first Governor General of India. Now let's move on to Charter Act of 1853. So now, in Charter Act of, even before Charter Act of 1853, there was a talk about opening an open competition for civil servants and everything, all those things. But that did not bear fruit in 1833, but it did bear fruit in 1853 Charter Act. So what happened? And remember one thing, which this is very important. For the first time in Charter Act of 1853, earlier there was no such thing like Governor General, Executive Council of the Legislative Council. Everything was, there was a simple council, but now there were two councils. The council was separated. One was Governor General Legislative Council, which will make laws, and the other was Executive Council, which will deal with implementation of laws. So, for the first time, the legislative and executive functions of GG were separated, and this happened because of Charter Act of 1853, right? Apart from that, what happened? And remember one more thing: when we're talking about 1773 Regulating Act, now Supreme Court was also established via that. Supreme Court in 1774 was established via that 1773 Act. So that also keep in mind. Now let me use an eraser and let me erase this, because right now we're focusing on Charter Act of 1853. So Legislative Council, Executive Council were separated. In open competition was introduced for civil servants, for recruitment of civil servants, right? And that's it. These are the major aspects of Charter Act of 1853. We don't need to go that deep into detail. Cool, dude. Now let's move on to 1858 Act. Now 1858 Act, you know what happened. Revolt happened. There were too many apprehensions among British princes and all those things. So to allay those apprehensions, Government of India Act of 1858 was passed, and the Queen proclaimed that there will be no further annexation and all those stuff. And they also said, and these company territories up until now they were under EIC, but now they came under the direct control of the crown, right? Governor General of India became the Viceroy. The name was changed. Now he became the Viceroy. And who was the first Viceroy? Lord Canning. He was the first Viceroy of India. Was the first Viceroy of India. And again, there was no double government. There was no Board of Control and Court of Directors. Now there was a Secretary of State. A new post was created, Secretary of State, and he was empowered with the different functions. Now remember one thing: when we read Morley-Minto Reforms or Morley-Minto Reforms, Montagu-Chelmsford Reforms. Have you ever thought how they're naming them? Montagu-Chelmsford Reforms and everything. See, remember one thing. The first name is for the secretary. The first name is for the secretary, and the second name is for the viceroy or the earlier GG. So here, Morley is the Secretary of State and Minto is the Viceroy. Similarly, Montagu and Chelmsford. This will help you in remembering. Suppose they ask you during 1918 or 1919, who was the Governor General? You do know that 1919 Act was Montagu-Chelmsford, and Chelmsford is the Viceroy. So you can deduce this with. This will help you in deducing. So 1858, everything company territory came under the direct control of Crown. What else happened? Governor General became Viceroy. Lord Canning was the first Viceroy. There was no Board of Control and Court of Directors. Secretary of State was created, and he was, what do you say? There was a council of 15 members who was to assist the Secretary of State. That's it. Let's move on. Let's not waste more time. After 1858, 1861 is very important, because now this is very important from one perspective, ordinance perspective. So now Viceroy was given the power to, what do you say, proclaim ordinances in emergency scenario. So you have to understand this. And again, there were three unofficial members too. Now we know by 1853, the legislative and executive powers were separated of Viceroy, right, or Governor General. Now there were three non-official members who were appointed to the Legislative Council, which was Dinkar Rao, Maharaja Patiala. Again, we don't need to remember that. One thing which is very important, apart from ordinance part, is, see, remember one thing, from 1773, the process of centralization started. This whole centralization process stopped, or stopped to a certain extent, via this Council of India Act of 1861, because whatever power were taken away from Bombay and Madras presidencies and their governors, they were given those powers. So decentralization began, and this is important, dude. Apart from ordinance, this decentralization thing is important. So Bombay and Madras were given back their powers via the 1861 Act, dude. Right? What else happened? I have written something in my notes also. Let's see my notes. So yes, ordinances, Indians were associated. We just saw that three members, Maharaja of Banaras and all those stuff, they were associated with the lawmaking process. Legislative powers to Bombay and Madras presidency was restored, dude. Let's move on to the other act. That is Indian Council Act of 1892, right? Cool. Dinkar Rao, Maharaja Patiala, Raja of Banaras, all these were implemented, or all these were added in the Legislative Council of, and they were non-official members. There were certain official members, there were certain non-official members. And now you will see in Indian Council Act of 1892, there will be even a provision of indirect election. Up until now, elections were direct, but now there will be indirect election, right? 1892. What else happened? There was limited power of discussion of, see why. 1885, Congress came into existence. So now there were too much pressure and all those stuff was going on. So in 1892, although it was like a carrot and stick policy, so they gave certain powers. You can discuss budget, but you will not ask supplementary questions. You will not vote on it. So you can just discuss budget. So 1892, this happened, right? Indirect elections. There was a provision of indirect election, which was also introduced, right? And what else, dude? That's it. No need of remembering how many members were increased and everything like that. Let's see what is there in my notes and what I have noted. I just note the important things. So indirect elections to legislative council, that introduced. Limited power was given to discuss budget. But remember, supplementary questions and voting, all these things were not allowed via ICA 1892, dude. Cool, dude. So now let's come to Morley-Minto Reforms. Separate electorates is one of the most important thingy. Separate electorates for Hindu and Muslims, which was later on introduced for Christians, Anglo-Indians, and all those stuff via 1990 Act, 1919 Act. But in 1909 Act, that is Morley-Minto Reforms, and we do know now that the Morley is Secretary of State and Minto is the Viceroy. That's how they name. In Montagu-Chelmsford Reforms, Montagu is your secretary and Chelmsford is your Viceroy, dude. So again, separate electorate, this was a major thing which was introduced via 1909 Act. There were certain members, Indian members, who were appointed to Viceroy's Executive Council. One of them was Satyendranath Sinha. Satyendra Sinha. If you want to see Satyendra Prasanna Sinha, you can see him here. Oh, I'm sorry. These days now, I've started watching English sitcoms, dude, and they do over exaggerate and overact a lot. So, but they're good actually. There's one I've heard a lot about. There's one American series which is called Community. Nobody watches it. Everybody watches Friends and everybody watches what Big Bang Theory. Do watch Community. There is one girl in there who is called Alison Brie. She's cute, dude. I don't know how to pronounce it, but that's how I pronounce it. Alison Brie or Brie or whatever. Now, Satyendra Prasanna Sinha, this guy. I hope you can see it. This particular guy, handsome guy, he was appointed in Viceroy's Executive Council via the 1909 Act. Cool, dude. Let me see if I have written anything more on that in my notes. So this thing, and one more thing which we have to understand is, so we have talked about Satyendranath Sinha appointed to Viceroy's Executive Council via the 1909 Act. Not many separate electorate was important. And yes, there was one more thing which is very important in 1909 Act is that the number of members in the Legislative Council, official, non-official members, they were increased. So number of members in the Legislative Council at the center was increased from 16 to 60, right? It was increased from 16 to 16 Central Legislative Council. Central Legislative Council. Similarly, the number of members in provincial legislatures were also increased. All these things happened. But the major thing which happened was the separate electorate, Satyendranath Sinha was appointed to Viceroy Executive Council. Now let's talk about 1919 Act. We talked about Satyendranath Sinha, 1919. So diarchy at provincial legislatures, they were introduced, or diarchy at provinces were introduced. What does diarchy at provinces means? See, there are different lists. We talk about them: central list, state list, concurrent list. So at that time, diarchy at provinces means two kinds of list or subjects were introduced. One means state list was divided into reserve list, reserve subject, and transferred subject. Reserve subject and transferred subject. Right? Reserve subject, transferred. Reserve was the exclusive under the exclusive prerogative of Governor General. Transferred subject where can be discussed by the Legislative Council. So and voting say and powers with powers voting say yes. So diarchy was introduced in the provinces in by 1919 Act. The separate electorate which was introduced by the 1909 Act, it was extended to Anglo-Indians, Christians or different voting say different Anglo-Indians, Sikhs, Christians, different communities. And what else was done by 1909 Act? It is sometimes even called the Magna Carta. We'll deal about it. We'll talk about it in detail. In fact, let me show you my notes, because even in Hindu, there was a specific, description about 1919 Act. So let's talk about it. So GeoI Act 1919 introduced the concept of diarchy at provincial level. We talked about reserved and transferred subject. Provincial Legislative Council expanded, with majority of them being elected. No need of reading it, remembering it. Bicameral, that is introduced at central level. See, Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha, which you are seeing today, you can see the seats of it were laid down in the GoI Act of 1919. Now, there was one very important thing, dude. I will just show you. Even in Hindu, there was an article on 26/7/18. What does it mean? On 26 July 2018, there was an article in Hindu which said that this Montagu-Chelmsford Reforms was India's Magna Carta. Why? Because it led to, it gave power to provincial legislature, talked about reserved list, transferred list, right? And there was there was a framework of devolution of powers, right? And it was even said that this MCR, that is Montagu-Chelmsford Reforms, it led basis for GoI Act 1935, which in itself is called the mini constitution. If they ask you which particular act is called the mini constitution, it is GoI Act 1935. Cool, dude. So that's why there is a claim that this MCR, Montagu-Chelmsford Reforms, can be claimed as the Magna Carta of modern India. And it was said by not me, but Hindu in 26 July 2018 edition. Cool, dude. Now, let's talk about Geo Act of 1935. So 1919, have we left anything? So bicameral legislature and central was introduced, diarchy in provincials was introduced, certain provisions of self-governance was introduced, and that's it. That's it. Now let's talk about Geo Act of 1935. So here it was proposed that an All India Federation will be formed, and diarchy at the provinces was abolished, because what was happening, I will tell you, this because of this diarchy, all the non-important areas, so-called non-important areas, were discussed by the Legislative Council, and all the important subjects were under Viceroy. So it led to distrust, it led to lots of issues. So because of that, what happened? Diarchy at the provinces was abolished. Let's see some more provisions of GoI Act of 1935. So what happened? Just a second. So yes, so large autonomy to provinces was given. Diarchy was abolished. So now even the Legislative Council could discuss on the subjects which was earlier the prerogative of only Viceroy. Partial reorganization of provinces was also done via the GoI Act of 1935. So Sindh was separated from Bombay. Earlier, remember this Bombay province. Earlier they contained the area of Maharashtra, current Maharashtra, Gujarat, even Sindh. But via the 1935 Act, Sindh was separated from Bombay. Bihar and Odisha was separated. Burma was completely separated from India. Apart from this, it also led to the establishment of Federal Court, the Geo Act of 1935. And there were many other provisions, but most of the provisions did not come into existence because many of the states did not join it. So it remained on paper only. Cool, dude. And that's it. That's it. And many of the provisions of Government of India Act of 1935 were incorporated in the modern constitution. Let's talk about 1947 Act. So 1947 Act provided that India and Pakistan would be two dominions. So understand this: India and Pakistan were dominion states, and India was dominion state till 26 January 1950. From 15th August 1947 till, you can say, 25th January 1950, India was a dominion state. What does it mean? If they were taking oath, they were taking oath in the name of British Crown, because the constitution was not prepared. So on 26 January, constitution was prepared and India became a federal state. So understand, via this 1947 Act, two independent dominions were created, India and Pakistan. The post of Viceroy was abolished. The post of Viceroy was abolished. Now each of these dominions were to have their own Governor General. This guy, Mountbatten, he wanted to become Governor General of both India and Pakistan, but Jinnah wanted to be the Governor General. So this Mountbatten only became the Governor General of our country, and Jinnah became the Governor General of Pakistan, dude. So yes, and right, there were states were given the options to a seat. See, remember, Indian Independence Act of 1947. More than this, the other plans like Cabinet Mission Plan and all those things are much more important, because there were many things which happened. Cabinet Mission Plans and Liaquat Ali Pact, all different things were happening on, right? So what is very important is that, remember this, that India was a dominion status till 25th January 1950, and after the framing of the constitution and the adoption of the constitution on 26th January 1950, India became a truly federal state. So that's it, dude. Let's keep until here only. And we have done a brief overview from 1773 Act to 1947 Act. So do go through this video, and it will help you in doing the parallel study. That's it, dude. So I will just end the meeting now. Be safe, be inside, don't go outside. It's a period of corona, but you people don't stop your study. Padhai corona. Cheap joke, but still. Bye bye.